Hi, we're here at the IFCA Conference on day 2, and I was privileged to listen to a panelist about trade digitalization. Digitalization in our industry is so prevalent. Bryan, thank you for joining me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Bryan Clark. I'm a director at the Australian Centre for International Trade and Investment, and I was talking on the panel around modernisation efforts, principally around the world and the sorts of protocols which are used that Australia could build upon.
It was quite an interesting panel. It seems like there's a lot of research being done. Do you want to briefly mention some of the ideas that was discussed?
Well, in my part, I've been researching single windows and have been looking at what a 21st century single window would look like. But fundamentally, businesses already use a lot of systems. How do we just draw upon the information that business already has? And that's referred to as natural business data. And it's certainly possible to do that. The world's tax systems already use that sort of system. We don't have this single transaction model which is used across our borders if we contemplate our tax system, and yet those same businesses are already reporting inside the tax system. They have obligations for meeting domestic compliances and other things. Why don't we just use that as the basis and then modernise from there around the augmentation of their domestic activities with their international activities?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I know I have been an ICS user myself, but as we're trying to keep people in jobs and teach them things and keep them up to date, the systems are quite old, so it's kind of essential. How important do you think it is to have government on board and try and get them to move in this direction?
Well, again, if you use the tax system as the precedent, it uses a sort of basis which is compliant by design. And so the tax system doesn't actually tell you how to do your tax. It allows you to run an accounting system that has been approved by the tax office, and so they know that its back-end operations are compliant, and therefore your system is a complying system. And you then just report on a periodic basis. You get the opportunity to correct it. You do so again on an annual basis. If you're making mistakes, the system tolerates that and allows you to correct. Why don't we approach our trade system like that too? It fundamentally is about collecting revenue for the government, the tariffs, the GST application, etc. So it has this tax aspect to it. And then it has obviously community protection and other things which we need, which are important too. But our banking system already monitors, illicit trade activities, ill-gotten gains, anti-terrorism funding, anti-money laundering, etc. And the banks all have to look at your transaction records and report that to the government if they see some sort of concerning activities. Again, if you buy and sell something internationally, it's already recorded in the banking system. Why don't we use that as the basis too?
I think it is that we need to work smarter and not harder and try and rebuild these systems that already exist and are already working. Industry itself are probably pushing towards this, and most of our members. What do you think? Will we see any change in the future, or is it always going to be an issue that we're going to be talking about, that we want change, or is it going to be the same system where it kind of collapsed and we were all frantic?
I'm certainly hoping there's change, but there's change because industry will do it. Other nations, it's international trade, it fundamentally involves somebody else. Yeah. And those other nations are moving much more quickly than Australia is. And so we're just being left further and further behind. We have to catch up. But our businesses, if they're involved with a European supply chain, for example, they'll be forced to use a digital product passport by 2027. If they use the United States system, that already has a preload system, so our industry is already familiar with doing it. Just adopt these things in Australia and be done with it.
Yeah, I think we will be almost forced into this way. It was quite interesting to hear on the panel that potentially a revision of the Customs Act, which is 1901. That's kind of a long time ago, actually.
Well, and it's not the only one. You know, the Tariff Act is associated with that as well. But when you consider that and you go back in time, one of the very first agencies of the new federal government in 1901 to deal with the Customs Act was in fact the Trade and Customs Department.
Right,
well,
yeah.
Perhaps we could return to a Trade and Customs Department who was responsible for dealing with both inbound and outbound trade.
I think it's so important to our GDP, and we don't want to be left behind in Australia. We're a very wealthy nation and we're very smart individuals. So I hope it's going to be something of the future. And thank you so much for being on the panel today. It was very interesting.
Thank you very much.